I used to be the mountain everything, but with just one stumble, I was immediately thrown from my pillar throne, becoming useless in my own home. My marriage didn't break from arguments or betrayal, but from a far more brutal truth. When I no longer had money, I was nothing. This is the raw confession of a man who lost everything, not due to a mistake, but to an unforeseen fall. I'm Kevin, and today I'm going to tell you a painful story, a profound secret about the fragility of trust and a man's worth in his partner's eyes when everything that seemed solid crumbles. The story of me and Elise, my ex-wife, will show you that sometimes collapse doesn't come from fierce storms, but from smoldering cracks in trust, from emotional voids no one dares to name. I used to be a production manager at a well-known industrial machinery company in Houston, Texas. For over a decade, I poured all my energy and intellect into that job. I was a man of numbers, detailed plans, and efficient solutions. I believed I was born to do this work, to create value, and more importantly, to shoulder my family's responsibilities. Throughout those 10-plus years, I was the primary breadwinner for my little family, my wife Elise, and our two kids, Jake and Mia, who were then 8 and 6 years old. From our suburban home with its charming sun-drenched garden, to the comfortable family car for weekend getaways, to our regular summer vacations at Corpus Christi Beach, to our warm, well-fed dinners, everything was the result of my tireless efforts, from late work hours and long business trips. I never complained, not once. I was proud to be able to take care of everyone, to allow Elise to pursue her beloved part-time job teaching painting to children at a community art center. It was her passion, a job that brought joy and relaxation, not financial burden. I believed that her living her passion was a crucial part of our family's happiness. I was the one who made the final decision for all major expenses, from buying a new refrigerator to choosing schools for our children. Elise always consulted me, trusting my choices because I was the one who brought stability and security. At that time, I was solid as a rock, the strong fortress my family relied on, an unshakable pillar. Every time anyone asked, Elise would say with admiration and pride in her clear, trusting voice, "I'm lucky to have a trustworthy husband like Kevin. He takes care of everything for the family. I don't have to worry much. I just focus on what I love and taking care of the kids." Hearing those words, my chest swelled with pride, feeling that all the hardships, all the pressures were worth it. I had absolute faith in my role and my position in the family. We weren't just husband and wife. We were a team, a perfect couple with clearly defined roles. I earned the money, she kept the home fires burning and pursued her passion. It was a balance I believed was perfect, a solid foundation for our happiness. We rarely argued about money because I always ensured we had plenty. I even felt a bit complacent that I had excelled in my role as a man in the family, a model husband. However, looking back, perhaps that very complacency blinded me to the subtle signs of change. I was too focused on being the financial pillar and forgot to maintain a deep emotional connection. I rarely asked Elise about the invisible pressures of her part-time job, her anxieties about raising children, or any personal dreams she might have kept hidden. I always thought as long as I brought money home, everything would be okay. I didn't realize that my rock-solid presence sometimes created an invisible distance, making Elise feel lonely in her own home, no longer finding the emotional resonance she might need. She was always perceptive, but I was too engrossed in my work to read those subtle cues from my wife. But life isn't always a bed of roses. There are storms that arrive without warning, sweeping away everything that seemed most stable. For me, that storm bore the name, the day I lost my job. It was a gloomy Thursday afternoon. I still remember every detail clearly. I was sitting in my office looking out the window at the bustling cranes, the noisy but familiar hum of machinery, when I received a call from the CEO. His voice was heavy, full of regret and helplessness. "Kevin, I'm very sorry to inform you, our company can no longer sustain itself. The global supply chain crisis, soaring raw material prices, inflation, and competition from foreign markets have crushed us." I listened as if struck by lightning, my mind reeling. The 40-year-old industrial machinery company, a pillar of the industry, where I had dedicated over a decade, where I had built my entire career, was going bankrupt. Thousands of employees were laid off without warning, just an email announcing mass layoffs and an emergency meeting the next morning. Holding the termination notice in my hand, my legs felt like they couldn't stand firm. The whole world seemed to spin. All sounds around me vanished. The rock-solid man suddenly felt like a tree in a hurricane, weak and hopeless. Fear crept into every cell, a primal fear of loss, of an uncertain future. I went home trying to maintain composure as best I could, trying to hide the panic gnawing within. Elise was preparing dinner. The laughter of Jake and Mia echoed from the living room, carefree. I looked at them, at my home, at what I had built with sweat and tears, and felt heavier than ever. How could I tell Elise, who had always trusted my stability? How could I tell the children who innocently believed their dad was the strongest man, the one they trusted as a pillar, a provider, was now empty-handed, disoriented? This is the first secret revealed. Even the strongest men, the most stable pillars, can feel lost and helpless when faced with a major event like job loss. The fear isn't just about finances. It's about the loss of identity, losing the definition of self-worth they had built for so long. For me, losing my job wasn't just losing income. It was losing my identity, losing the role I had proudly held, and more importantly, losing confidence in my ability to protect my family. It was a shock greater than any financial crisis. The first few days after losing my job, the atmosphere in the house was heavier than ever. I tried to act normal, woke up on time, pretended to go to work, then sat in my study reading the news or browsed for jobs online. But Elise was more perceptive than I thought. She noticed my unusual silence, my distant gaze as I sat staring at a blank computer screen instead of working, or my uncontrollable sighs. Finally, I couldn't keep it secret anymore. One evening after the kids were asleep, I told Elise everything, each word heavy as stone. Elise sat silently for a long time, her face pale under the dim yellow light. I saw her eyes change from worry to a fear I had never seen, a fear of an uncertain future. At first, Elise was supportive. She hugged me tightly, patting my back. "It's okay, you'll find a new job. You're so talented with so many years of experience." Her voice was warm, full of trust, just as I had once trusted myself. I felt partly relieved, as if I could still lean on her, that she would still be my companion, the one to help me overcome all difficulties. I thought, this is it, Elise still trusts me unconditionally. For the first 3 months, I sent out over 80 job applications, from similar production manager positions to lower-level jobs positions I would never have considered before. I went to interviews constantly wearing my old but neat suit, meticulously preparing every answer, every scenario. I put in my best effort. Not for a second did I sit still. But the job market was much tougher than I had imagined. Nearing 40, without new degrees, without experience in emerging fields like AI or big data, I realized I was too outdated, too slow compared to society's pace. Those younger, more dynamic, with newer skills seemed to be prioritized in every interview. I received dozens of rejection emails, polite but cold rejections like buckets of cold water splashed on my face every day, gradually eroding my last shred of self-confidence. Gradually, Elise's encouragement also dwindled. Her patience ran out. Her voice changed. Her eyes no longer offered comfort, but instead worry, then mixed with a bit of barely concealed irritability and disappointment. Her questions were no longer inquiries, but indirect reproaches. "Why don't you try being a delivery driver or something temporary, or drive for Uber? Earning a little money is better than nothing. At least it would help me out a bit, wouldn't it?" Her voice had a hint of command, no longer a gentle suggestion. My heart twisted as I listened. Delivery driver, Uber driver. Me, a former production manager who once oversaw hundreds of workers and controlled complex production lines, now having to do those jobs. My pride was deeply wounded, even though I knew it was necessary. "You just keep looking for jobs with no results. Do you think you should change your strategy? Or should you just accept jobs outside your field to make ends meet?" She asked, her voice full of disappointment, as if I was intentionally prolonging this situation. And then what I feared most came true. "I feel like I'm carrying both our burdens, Kevin. I'm so tired. The financial pressure, the pressure of having to figure out where the money will come from this month to pay bills, to pay for the kids' tuition. I can't take it anymore." That sentence was like a knife plunging into my heart, severing the last thread of my pride. I, who was once the pillar, now became a burden, an obstacle in my own wife's life. Elise's eyes no longer looked at me as someone trustworthy, a hero. They looked at me as a problem, an obstacle, a burden she had to carry on her shoulders. I knew she was tired. I knew she was shouldering an extra financial burden, working overtime at the art center, meticulously calculating every small expense, even cutting unnecessary costs. I saw her staying up later, sleeping less, her smile slowly fading. But I was also incredibly exhausted, both physically and mentally. I didn't want to be unemployed. I didn't want to be useless in the eyes of my wife and children. I didn't want to wake up each morning to my 2 children asking, "Daddy, aren't you going to work today?" with innocent but questioning eyes full of expectation for a strong father. Helplessness gnawed at my mind. I felt like I was slowly sinking, with no way to swim up, no one to cling to. I tried to explain to Elise, "I'm trying my best, Elise. The market is so tough. I'm taking online courses to update my skills. I've even applied for lower positions. I'm doing everything I can." But she no longer seemed to want to hear. She only looked at the results, at the dwindling numbers in our bank account each day, at the piling bills. Her empathy, her patience had run dry like a river in a drought, leaving only dry cracks. This is the second secret revealed. Fatigue and financial pressure can quickly erode love and understanding in a relationship even when both partners are trying in their own ways. And sometimes a wife doesn't just need a husband who earns money, but also a mentally strong husband who can pick himself up and provide hope in the most difficult times. Kevin was failing to prove that not because he wasn't trying, but because he had lost his self-confidence, and that made Elise lose faith in him. Family life gradually turned into a cold battlefield where words became weapons and silence was an impenetrable wall. Elise started working more, taking evening and weekend art classes. She said, "We can't just sit and wait anymore. I have to take care of the children's future. We can't live on savings forever." I agreed. I understood that she was trying for our family, for our children's future. I appreciated her sacrifice. But what I didn't expect was her attitude. Whenever she came home, her eyes no longer respectful, her words no longer gentle, but instead unconcealed disappointment and reproach. Words that cut into my heart little by little. I tried to do all the housework to lighten Elise's burden. I cooked, cleaned, drove the kids to school, fixed small things around the house. I wanted to prove that I was still useful, that I was still a part of this family. But those efforts seemed futile. Do you know Jake had to ask his friend for money today because he didn't have lunch money? Her question hit me like a sledgehammer, stunning me. I was dumbfounded. I always tried to make sure our children never lacked anything, no matter how small. But I gave him money. I gave him $10 this morning. I stammered, my voice trembling. She just sighed, shaking her head, her eyes full of weariness and disappointment. $10. Do you know how many expenses there are? Tuition, books, extracurricular activities for the kids. Do you think everything is that simple, Kevin? Are you going to keep living in your own world? Do you know how much burden is on my shoulders now? I have to worry about rent, utilities, the kids' tuition. I have to calculate every penny, have to give up my personal hobbies, have to take on extra art classes that I don't even want to. Do you feel that pressure? You just sit there and wait for a suitable job instead of accepting reality?" She said, her voice bitter, and I saw her tears stream down, no longer hidden. I wanted to hug her, wanted to say I was sorry, wanted to say I was trying, wanted to say I loved her and the children more than anything. But the words just choked in my throat. I felt I had no right to say anything anymore. Every excuse became meaningless in the face of the burdens she was enduring, in the face of my own helplessness. I tried freelancing, repairing industrial machinery, taking odd jobs from small workshops, companies that needed someone urgently, but the work wasn't stable. Sometimes I had no work for an entire week. Sometimes it was just enough to cover gas for commuting. The meager income wasn't enough to make up for the large deficit I once brought in. And every time Elise opened the door and walked into the house after a tiring day at work, I felt like I had to apologize for being there, apologize for no longer being the husband she was once proud of, apologize for becoming a burden, a useless man. Her eyes sometimes were even more terrifying than her reproaches. They were the eyes of disappointment, of resignation, of someone who had completely lost faith in me. Sometimes I even heard her talking on the phone with her mother. Her voice was soft whispering, but the words were sharp as knives, piercing my heart. "Mom, I'm so tired. I feel like a single mother. I have to take care of both kids, worry about money, worry about everything. Kevin is just like a lodger now. He's no help at all. He just sits there." Hearing those words, my heart turned cold, as if thousands of needles were piercing it. Single mother lodger. Me, the one who used to take care of everything for the family, the one who was once proud to be the strongest pillar, now seen as redundant, a parasite, an invisible ghost in my own home. That was the greatest humiliation I had ever endured. This is the third secret revealed. When a wife has to take on responsibilities previously handled by her husband, respect and love can be eroded by pressure and disappointment. And sometimes the husband's lack of initiative in seeking solutions, even temporary ones, is the final straw, making the wife feel lonely and lose faith. The pain comes not only from words, but also from the change in how your partner perceives you, from the loss of the hero image in their eyes. The labels single mother and lodger that Elise used to describe me to her mother haunted me, constantly gnawing at my mind day and night. I couldn't sleep, couldn't focus on anything. The feeling of being considered redundant in my own home, in the family I had painstakingly built with sweat and tears, was an indescribable pain. I, a man once full of self-respect, once proud of my career and my ability to provide, now felt I had no value left. Elise's gaze, her reproachful words, all contributed to the self-doubt that gnawed at me day by day, hour by hour. I tried so hard. I stayed up late looking for jobs online, even searching for free online courses to update my skills. I went to the city library, attended job workshops, networked with strangers in the industry. I even tried taking on odd jobs like plumbing for neighbors, fixing computers for friends, doing electrical work for small shops, but those weren't stable or large enough sources of income to solve the family's financial problems. I felt like a ship sinking in the ocean trying to bail out water with my bare hands, but the water kept pouring in faster, gradually submerging me. I didn't want to see my children go without. I didn't want to see Elise exhaust herself carrying the burden alone. But I was helpless, utterly helpless. One evening when Elise returned from teaching art, she sat down on the sofa, sighing heavily, her face clearly showing weariness and frustration. I approached her, trying to strike up a conversation to break the suffocating silence. "Are you very tired today? Do you want me to make some hot tea?" I asked, my voice full of concern and care. She just glanced at me, her eyes cold as ice, then turned away, not answering. I knew that was when I had to face the truth, the wound in my heart that was too deep to hide. I couldn't bear this silence and distance any longer. I took a deep breath, feeling like I was preparing for a final battle, though I knew I had lost long ago. Lost in my own fight with myself and with my wife's trust. I looked straight into Elise's eyes, my gaze containing all the hurt, helplessness, and fear I had tried to hide for so long. I wanted her to see me, the man breaking down in front of her. "Elise," I began, my voice hoarse, choked with emotion. "Do you still trust me? Do you still believe in my abilities, in my ability to take care of this family?" That question seemed to silence the entire room, to the point where I could hear my own heart pounding in my chest and the wind whistling through the window crack. Elise froze. She didn't answer immediately. She looked at me for a long time, a gaze I will never forget in my life. It was a look of consideration, of cold assessment, of someone wondering if there was anything left to hold on to, if it was still worth hoping for me. That gaze had no explosive anger, no hatred, but only the coldness of exhausted trust, complete helplessness. It was the look of raw truth, undeniable. Finally, she sighed, a heavier sigh than ever before, and said, her voice tiny but each word clear, as if she had thought long and hard, and the decision had been made long ago. "I trust the man you used to be, Kevin. I trusted the man who was once the pillar of this family, the one I could lean on without thinking, the one I believed would always provide for me and the children." She paused, looking straight into my eyes, not flinching. "As for now, Kevin, I don't know anymore. I really don't know anymore. I'm too tired to keep believing in uncertainty. I can't live in this anxiety forever." Those words, they were more painful than any divorce papers, more painful than any physical betrayal. It wasn't just an admission that her trust in me had vanished, but an admission that my current self, who I was now, was no longer worthy of that trust. The man she trusted, the strong, confident man, was dead. The self I had built for so long, my identity as the pillar, had completely crumbled. I was a ghost in my own home, a stranger in my wife's eyes, a burden she wanted to shed. The feeling of no longer being leaned on, no longer being the pillar, killed me from within, little by little. I felt like I was being pushed out of my own life, out of my own family. This is the fourth secret revealed. Trust in marriage relies not only on love, but also on stability, reliability, and the ability to meet core role expectations of a partner. When one of these core elements, like the role of provider, is shaken, trust can collapse, dragging down love and respect. And the words "I don't know anymore" from a partner are more terrifying than a breakup, because they are a declaration of the complete loss of faith, a void that cannot be filled. After that conversation, everything in the house became tasteless, bland. The house was still warm, the furniture still familiar, but the atmosphere was cold as an iceberg. Dinners were silent, broken only by the clinking of cutlery and the carefree chatter of our children, oblivious to the tragedy unfolding before them. I still tried to find work, still tried to do odd jobs to earn a little money, but my spirit was broken. I knew Elise no longer trusted me, and I no longer trusted myself. I had lost my motivation, lost faith in my own future. I began to search for opportunities further afield, in other states, for jobs I had never considered before, even positions much lower than my experience warranted. I was no longer picky about the role or salary. I just needed a stable job, a place to start, over a chance to prove to myself, and maybe to Elise, that I could still be a pillar, that I could still stand up. I wanted to escape the shadow of failure that weighed so heavily on me. After several weeks of relentless searching through dozens of online interviews and submitting applications across the U.S., I got a job in another state, Oklahoma. It was a production manager position for a smaller company with a significantly lower salary than my old one, but most importantly, it was stable with a long-term contract and clear benefits. It was a glimmer of light at the end of the tunnel, an opportunity to escape my current stagnation, to reclaim my worth, to rebuild my life. I came home filled with hope. I thought, this is it, this is our chance to start over, to rebuild trust. I would work harder. I would prove to Elise that I was still her reliable man, that I could still carry this family. I told Elise about the new job, about our plans to move, about how we would start a new life in a new city, free from the pressures of the past. I suggested the whole family move with me, start fresh, a new chapter for our marriage, a second chance for love and trust. Elise listened to me in silence. She didn't interrupt, showed no clear emotion, no smile or glimmer of hope in her eyes. I looked into her eyes, trying to find a hint of joy, or at least agreement, a sign that she still wanted to come with me. But there was nothing. Only an empty gaze, a cold expression. After a long silence, she sighed, a heavier sigh than ever before, and said, her voice tiny but each word clear, as if she had thought it through carefully and the decision had been made long ago. I can't leave everything I'm trying to build here, Kevin. I have stable art classes, the kids are used to their school and friends here, their lives have settled into a routine. I can't disrupt everything again. The kids and I will stay. Those words were like a final knife thrust through my heart, severing the last connection between us. I understood. It wasn't because she didn't want to go, not because she loved Texas more than me, but because she no longer saw me as her pillar. She didn't want to entrust her and the children's future to someone she no longer trusted, someone she believed couldn't ensure stability. She had built another pillar for herself and the children, a pillar she carried herself without me. She didn't want to go with me anymore, not because I wasn't good, but because she no longer trusted me to carry the load. She had let go of my hand both literally and figuratively, no longer seeing me as a safe haven, as the only one she could rely on. We divorced 3 months later. A process without arguments, without tears, without harsh words. Just the quiet acceptance of both sides, an unavoidable end. We had nothing left to say, nothing left to fight for. Trust had died, and when trust dies, love cannot survive, no matter how deep it once was. I didn't divorce because I stopped loving Elise. I divorced because I understood that I couldn't live in a relationship where trust had shattered, where I was no longer seen as a pillar, where I was a stranger in my own family, an invisible burden. I divorced because I realized that sometimes the only way to save yourself is to leave a place where you no longer belong, where you have become a burden instead of a husband, a father. I chose liberation, however painful it was. This is the ultimate secret revealed. A marriage can end not because love is gone, but because of a fundamental loss of trust in a partner's ability to meet core relationship expectations, e.g., the role of provider, stability. And sometimes separation is a painful but necessary choice for both individuals to regain their self-worth and start a new life, even if separately, even with unhealed scars. Life after divorce is a long journey of healing, of redefining myself and finding peace within my soul. I moved to Oklahoma, starting my new job with a completely different mindset. No longer the soaring pride of a pillar, but humility, determination, and a dull ache that constantly reminded me of what I had lost. I lived in a small apartment, worked hard, and spent my evenings reading, learning new skills, things I had overlooked before due to my complacency. I learned to live independently, learned to take care of myself, and found small joys in life again, things I had unintentionally neglected in the whirlwind of responsibility and sacrifice. I realized that a man's worth isn't just in his ability to earn money or his social status, but also in his ability to face hardship, his resilience, and most importantly, his ability to remain true to himself, continuously learning and adapting. I spent sleepless nights questioning myself about every mistake, about what I did right and what I did wrong. I learned to accept that I am not perfect, that I also have limitations, and that sometimes life will push us into circumstances we cannot control. But what matters is how we get back up after those failures, how we confront our wounds and learn from them. I learned to forgive Elise, not because she was entirely wrong, but because pressure had changed her. And I also learned to forgive myself for my misguided expectations of a fixed role and my failure to maintain the emotional connection, having overlooked her silent pleas for help. I realized that trust is not something that is naturally born and exists forever in a relationship. It is a garden that needs to be tended, watered daily with transparency, sincere communication, understanding, and mutual respect. A strong relationship is not just based on passionate love or financial stability, but also on a deep understanding of each other's emotional needs, the sharing of all aspects of life, including fears, insecurities, and even unspoken what-ifs. I learned that striving to be the financial pillar is important, but maintaining emotional connection, becoming the deepest confidant for your partner, the one they can trust to share everything with, is far more crucial, because that is the foundation for true trust and intimacy, the soul of a marriage. Now I look back at my story with a calmer perspective, no longer resentful or pained as before. I don't regret my decision. I chose to let go to preserve my self-respect so I wouldn't have to live in a relationship where I was a stranger, an outsider in the life of the person I loved, someone who was just an empty shell of trust. I found peace in the truth no matter how harsh that truth was, even if it meant starting over from scratch. Perhaps Elise has also found her own lesson. I hear she still works hard and she has matured a lot, especially in how she deals with emotions and communication. She has become a stronger, more independent woman. I hope she has found peace and learned to cherish the core values of a relationship, not just comfort or fleeting emotional resonance, but absolute trust and genuine companionship through all circumstances, whether favorable or most difficult. Please cherish the trust your partner places in you. Be transparent with your life partner. Share all your worries and expectations. Be brave enough to share your voids, your insecurities, your deepest desires with the person you've chosen to spend your life with, and listen to them share the same. Don't let life's pressures, unexpected changes, or unstated expectations destroy the foundation of happiness, of emotional connection. Because once trust is lost, rebuilding it is harder than starting a new relationship from scratch, and sometimes it's impossible. Your worth lies not just in what you do, but also in your sincerity, in your transparency, in your resilience when facing challenges, and in your ability to uphold your vows, not just with your body, but with your soul and heart. Be your partner's only confidant, their ultimate safe harbor, and demand the same from them. Trust once fractured is incredibly hard to heal. Thank you for listening to my story. If this story touched your heart, or if you have any thoughts or feelings you'd like to share, don't hesitate to leave a comment below. Please hit the like button, share this story with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on other profound stories. Stories about life, love, and the lessons we've paid a price to learn. Your support is what motivates me to keep sharing these pieces of my life so everyone can draw valuable lessons for themselves and build stronger relationships based on absolute trust and mutual understanding. I'll see you in the next videos. Goodbye for now.